The boy woke up before sunrise as he did most days. The small room he shared with his younger sister felt colder than usual, and the thin blanket barely kept the chill away. He rubbed his eyes and tried to shake off the heaviness in his body. Life had never been easy for him, and mornings like this reminded him of that. His mother was already awake in the kitchen, trying to quietly cook breakfast without waking the neighbors. She worked long hours at 2 different jobs, often coming home exhausted and with barely enough energy to talk. Still, she always made sure her children had something to eat, even if it meant skipping a meal herself. The boy quietly put on his worn-out shoes and stepped out of the room. The floorboards creaked, a sound that had become familiar over the years. His sister was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling in slow, peaceful rhythm. He paused for a moment, looking at her sleeping face, and felt a rush of determination. He had to keep going, not just for himself, but for her too. Outside, the city was slowly waking up. The streets were wet from last night's rain, reflecting the dim orange glow of the streetlights. He could see a few early risers walking hurriedly to catch the first bus, their faces tired but determined. He pulled his jacket tighter and started, walking toward the small diner where he worked after school. The place was not fancy, just a corner spot that served quick meals to people passing by, but it was enough for him to earn a few dollars to help at home. He reached the diner and greeted the owner, a kind man who had known him since he was a little boy. The man had taken a liking to him, often letting him stay a little longer to practice cooking or cleaning, teaching him small lessons about responsibility and respect. Today, the diner was quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the smell of frying oil in the air. He put on his apron and started his usual tasks, wiping tables, organizing condiments, and making sandwiches for the few customers who came in early. Even though he was tired and hungry himself, he never complained. He had learned early on that complaining did not change anything. Hard work, patience, and kindness were what mattered. Sometimes, when he had extra food at the end of his shift, he would save it for his mother or sister, or for a neighbor who was struggling just like his family. He knew what it felt like to be hungry, and he could not ignore it in others. On his break, he walked outside holding a small bag of leftovers. The morning air was crisp, and he could see his breath forming little clouds as he exhaled. As he walked down the street, he noticed a man sitting on the corner. The man looked tired and unkempt, wearing clothes that had seen better days. His hair was messy, and his hands trembled slightly as he held an empty cup. He looked around cautiously, as if he had been ignored by the world for a long time. The boy's heart tightened at the sight. He had seen homeless people before, but something about this man caught his attention. There was a quiet dignity in him, a sense of someone who had lived a full life but had been knocked down by circumstances beyond his control. The boy hesitated for a moment. He was hungry too, and the food in his bag was barely enough for himself. But then he remembered the mornings when he had gone without, the days when his stomach ached, and his mother tried to hide her own hunger from him. He couldn't walk past this man without offering something. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle him, and held out the bag. "Here," he said softly. "I don't have much, but you can have this." The man looked up, surprise and gratitude mixing in his eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice raspy. "You're not going to need it?" The boy shook his head. "I'll be fine," he said. "I just want you to eat something." The man took the bag with shaking hands and looked inside. The small meal was simple: a sandwich, a few pieces of fruit, and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but it was enough to fill a hungry stomach for a little while. He smiled faintly, a genuine smile that seemed to reach his eyes for the first time in a long while. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," the boy replied. "Just eat." They sat on the edge of the sidewalk together, the boy watching as the man slowly took small bites. There was a quiet moment between them, a connection that didn't need words. The boy felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of purpose that he had not felt before. Helping someone, even in a small way, made the weight of his own struggles feel a little lighter. As the man ate, He began to talk quietly, sharing small pieces of his life. He had once had a home, a job, a family, but life had taken unexpected turns. Bad luck, illness, and a string of misfortunes had left him on the streets. He spoke with a sadness that was palpable, but without bitterness. It was clear that he had once been proud, once capable, and now he was simply surviving. The boy listened, his own troubles momentarily forgotten. He realized that everyone had struggles, some visible and some hidden. He had spent so much time worrying about his own life that he had forgotten to see the world around him, to understand that everyone was fighting battles they could not always share. Sitting there, sharing a simple meal, he felt a deep sense of empathy. After a while, the man finished the food and looked at the boy with gratitude that words could hardly express. "You have a good heart," he said simply. "Most people would have walked by. You didn't. That says a lot about you." The boy smiled, shrugging slightly. "I just did what I thought was right," he said. They talked a little more, sharing small stories and quiet laughter. The boy learned that sometimes, even a small act of kindness could make a big difference. He also realized that helping others didn't always require money or power. It required heart, courage, and a willingness to act when it mattered most. When it was time for the boy to return to work, he stood up and waved. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too, young man," the man replied. "And remember, what you do today can change tomorrow for you and for others." As the boy walked back to the diner, he felt different, lighter, stronger, and more aware of the world around him. He realized that even though his life was difficult, he had something many others lacked: the ability to choose kindness in a world that didn't always make it easy. That small act of sharing a meal had opened his eyes to something larger than himself. Back inside the diner, he continued his work with renewed energy. The customers came and went, the orders kept him busy, but his mind was alive with thought. He kept thinking about the man on the corner, wondering how many other people were out there waiting for someone to notice them, to show a little kindness. That night, when he returned home, he told his sister about the man and how he had shared his food. She listened with wide eyes, impressed by his courage and generosity. Their mother, coming home exhausted from work, smiled faintly when she heard the story. She didn't say much, but her eyes glimmered with pride. The boy went to bed that night with a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Life was still hard and the road ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: he could make a difference no matter how small. That thought carried him into sleep, a quiet promise to himself that he would continue to act with kindness, courage, and heart, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The morning sun rose again the next day, and the boy knew that the world was full of people who needed help, people whose lives could change because someone cared. And he had decided that he would be that someone, one small act at a time, believing that even the smallest gesture could create a ripple effect, touching lives in ways he could not yet imagine. The next day, the boy could not stop thinking about the man on the corner. Even as he walked to the diner and went through the usual motions of his job, his mind kept returning to the quiet gratitude in the man's eyes and the way he had seemed so surprised that someone cared. That small encounter had touched him more deeply than he expected. He realized that what he had done was more than just giving food. It was giving hope, respect, and a reminder that someone still saw him as a human being worthy of kindness. During his break, he found himself walking the same route he had taken yesterday, carrying a small bag of leftover food again. This time, he hesitated before approaching the man. Part of him wondered if it would be welcomed or if the man might feel embarrassed. But that thought faded quickly when he saw the man sitting in the same spot, hunched over and staring at the ground. The boy's heart tightened. Without thinking too much, he walked up and placed the bag next to him. The man looked up slowly, recognition spreading across his face. "You again?" he said, his voice gentle but cautious. "Yes," the boy said, smiling. "I brought you something to eat." The man's eyes softened, and a small smile appeared. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know," the boy replied. but I wanted to. Last time you looked hungry and I thought, maybe today you could have something warm." The man nodded, his hands shaking slightly as he opened the bag. Inside were a sandwich, a small cup of soup, and a bottle of water. The boy had even managed to include a piece of fruit this time, something sweet to brighten the morning. The man looked at the food, and for a moment, his expression was almost childlike, a mix of wonder and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have a kind heart, young man. Not many people do what you are doing." The boy shrugged, feeling a little shy under the praise. I don't know. I guess I remember what it's like to be hungry, to feel like nobody notices you. I didn't want you to feel that way." The man nodded slowly. He took a small bite of the sandwich and sighed, the warmth of the food bringing a little comfort to his tired body. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Someone who cared about the world even when the world didn't care about them." The boy paused, curious. "Who was that?" he asked softly. The man looked at him, a flicker of sadness crossing his face. "A friend, long ago. I lost touch with him. Life. It has a way of taking people away from each other, but seeing you reminds me of that person and it gives me hope again." The boy felt a warmth spread through him. He had not expected to hear something so personal. He realized that this man was not just hungry for food, he was hungry for connection. For someone to recognize him as a human being with a story, not just a person living on the street. They sat together quietly, eating, and after a while the man began to talk about his life. He shared small pieces of his story, speaking softly as if afraid that anyone nearby might hear. He had once had a job, a home, and a family, but life had thrown challenges at him that he could not overcome. Illness, financial troubles, and a series of misfortunes had left him on the streets. He spoke with sadness, but there was no bitterness in his voice, only a quiet resignation, a way of accepting what had happened without letting it destroy him completely. The boy listened intently. He realized that life could be unfair, that even people who worked hard and did everything right could still face struggles beyond their control. But he also noticed something else. The man had wisdom. There was a sense of experience in the way he spoke, a knowledge of life that came from surviving hardships and observing the world closely. As the days went by, the boy continued to bring food when he could. Each time, the man's gratitude seemed to grow and their conversations deepened. They began to share more than just meals. They shared stories, small pieces of advice, and laughter. The man told the boy about lessons he had learned, mistakes he had made, and ways to face challenges with courage. In turn, the boy shared his own struggles at home, his dreams, and his hopes for the future. One afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, the man leaned back and looked at the boy seriously. "You have something special," he said. "A good heart is rare, but you also have potential. I can see it in you. Don't waste it." The boy felt a little embarrassed by the praise, but he also felt proud. He had never been told that he had potential in such a clear, confident way. Most days he felt invisible, just another teenager trying to survive. Hearing someone recognize his abilities and character was powerful. "Thank you," he said softly. I try my best." "You do more than try," the man replied. "You act. That's what matters. Many people want to be kind, but few actually do it. You are acting, and that will take you far." Those words stayed with the boy long after he left. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about what the man had said. He realized that kindness was not just about helping others. It was about taking action when it mattered, about making choices that reflected who he wanted to be, not just who the world expected him to be. The man began to tell the boy about small ways to prepare for the future, even when life felt uncertain. He spoke about saving money, learning new skills, and taking opportunities when they appeared. At first, the boy was hesitant, unsure if someone like him could ever have a chance at something better. But the man's stories were filled with examples of people who had started with nothing and found a way to rise again. "You don't have to have everything to start making a difference," the man said one evening. "Sometimes all it takes is one small choice, one act of courage, one decision to keep going when others might give up." The boy listened closely. He felt a spark of hope that he had not felt before. Maybe, just maybe, he could change his life step by step just as this man had suggested. He realized that his life did not have to be defined by struggle alone, that he could take control of his future, even if it started with small steps. Over time, the bond between them grew stronger. The man began to trust the boy, sharing more about his past, his regrets, and his dreams that had been left behind. He spoke about mistakes he had made, moments he wished he could redo, and the lessons he had learned from hardship. The boy absorbed these lessons like a sponge, understanding that every setback could teach something valuable, every failure could offer insight, and every small act of courage could create a ripple of change. The boy started noticing changes in himself, too. He became more confident, more aware of the choices he made, and more willing to take responsibility for his actions. He worked harder at the diner, studied more seriously at school, and even began helping his mother in ways he had not before. He wanted to honor the trust and belief that the man had shown in him. One rainy afternoon, the man surprised him by giving a small piece of advice that struck deeply. "You are not defined by what you don't have," he said. "You are defined by what you do with what you do have. And right now you have heart, courage, and wisdom. Use them wisely." The boy looked at him, realizing how much he had learned in such a short time. The man was no longer just someone he helped. He was a mentor, a guide, and a friend. And in helping the man, the boy had also helped himself, discovering strength, resilience, and purpose that he did not know he possessed. By the end of that week, the boy had brought food every day, each visit deepening their connection. Neighbors and passers-by began to notice the boy's actions, some offering small gestures of support or nods of approval. But the boy never sought attention. He simply wanted to help, to make a difference, and to learn from someone who had experienced life's highs and lows in a way that school and books could never teach. The boy realized something important. Kindness was contagious, not because of recognition or reward, but because it created change in the hearts of both the giver and the receiver. And in that small corner of the street, amid the wet pavement and early morning chill, a life that had once felt empty and hopeless was beginning to change, one simple act of sharing at a time. The boy went home that night feeling proud, thoughtful, and more determined than ever. He knew life would continue to be difficult, but he also knew that he had a choice. He could let life push him down, or he could rise above, carrying kindness and hope wherever he went. That realization was more valuable than any amount of money or recognition. It was a treasure he could carry with him forever. The days passed, and the bond between the boy and the man grew stronger. Each morning, the boy would carry a small bag of food, and each day they would sit together on that same corner. But over time, something deeper began to happen. It was no longer just about sharing a meal. It became a place where stories were exchanged. Advice was given, and dreams were quietly nurtured. One afternoon, the man looked at the boy with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said slowly, "I have seen many people in my life. Some had everything and wasted it, and some had nothing and made something beautiful out of it. You remind me of the second kind." The boy felt a mix of pride and humility. He wasn't sure if he was doing anything special. He was just trying to survive, just trying to help where he could. But hearing the man say that made him feel seen in a way he never had before. It was like someone finally recognized his potential, not just his struggles. "You've been working hard at the diner," the man continued, "and you are smart. I can see it. But intelligence alone won't carry you. You need guidance, planning, and a little courage to take risks." The boy listened carefully, eager to absorb every word. The man had a way of speaking that made even difficult lessons feel like small sparks of hope. He began sharing small strategies, little tips about managing money, learning skills, and thinking ahead. It was as if he was teaching the boy a life class no school could offer. "I can help you," the man said one morning, as the rain fell softly around them. "I may not have much, but I have knowledge, connections, and experience. If you are willing, I can guide you, and maybe you can start building a future that will surprise even you." The boy blinked, unsure what to say. His heart raced. He had never expected this kind of opportunity. The man, someone he had only met on the street, was offering guidance, mentorship, and hope. I don't know if I can," he stammered. "I've never done anything like that before." "You don't have to know," the man replied calmly. "You just have to try, and I will be here every step of the way. Life is about taking chances when they matter most, and this is one of those moments." The boy thought about it for a long time. He remembered his family struggling, his mother working endlessly, his sister dreaming of things they could not afford. He realized that this could be his chance not only to change his life, but also to help his family and inspire others. He nodded slowly, determination building inside him. "Okay," he said. "I'll try. I'll do my best." From that day, the man started teaching him more structured lessons. They would sit together and talk about simple business ideas, saving money, budgeting, and planning small projects. The man had lost everything once, but he knew how to rebuild, and he shared every lesson he had learned. He explained things patiently, step by step, never making the boy feel small or unimportant. The boy began to practice what he learned. He started saving a small portion of his earnings from the diner, even when it was difficult. He made lists of goals, short-term and long-term, and started thinking about ways to make small improvements in his life. He realized that success didn't always come from big leaps. It often came from steady steps, patience, and consistent effort. As weeks passed, the boy began noticing subtle changes in himself. He became more confident at school, more organized at work, and more thoughtful at home. His mother noticed too. One evening, she said softly, "I see something different in you lately. You seem stronger, like you believe in yourself a little more." The boy smiled, but he didn't tell her about the man on the corner. It felt too private, too special. He wasn't ready to share the full story yet. But deep down, he knew that the man had given him something priceless, belief in himself and the tools to act on that belief. One day, the man asked the boy a question that surprised him. "What do you want for your life?" he said, looking straight into his eyes. The boy thought for a moment. He had dreams, but they felt far away, almost impossible. "I want to make life better," he said slowly. "For my family, for myself, maybe even for people who don't have much." The man nodded, clearly impressed. "That is a good start. But you need to be specific. Dreams are powerful, but they need a path. Otherwise, they stay dreams forever." He spent the next hour helping the boy write down small, achievable goals. Some were simple. Finish schoolwork on time, save a certain amount of money each week, learn a new skill at the diner. Others were bigger. Start a small business, help the community, create something meaningful that could last beyond their immediate circumstances. The boy felt a spark of excitement. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a distant, dark place. It felt like something he could shape, step by step. As the boy practiced these lessons, he began noticing the people around him differently. He saw neighbors struggling, classmates facing challenges, even customers at the diner who seemed invisible to everyone else. The man's words echoed in his mind. Even small acts matter. Even a little kindness can create change. He realized that he had a choice every day, to act with care, empathy, and courage, or to ignore the world. He chose the first again and again, feeling stronger and more alive each time. One afternoon, as they sat on the corner sharing a small meal, the man leaned closer and said quietly, "You know, I see something in you that I lost in myself long ago. Determination, courage, and a heart willing to act. If you keep this, you will go far." The boy felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to thank the man, but words failed him. Instead, he nodded and smiled. The man's belief in him was becoming a foundation, a quiet power that strengthened him every day. As the months passed, their friendship grew. The man began introducing the boy to ideas about small projects he could start. They discussed simple ways to earn money beyond the diner, ways to help the community, and ways to create a life that could change not just their own circumstances, but also inspire others. The boy was amazed at how much knowledge the man had even after losing everything. It made him realize that experience, wisdom, and courage could be far more valuable than money alone. One morning, the man handed the boy a small notebook. "Write everything down," he said. "Your ideas, your goals, your mistakes, your lessons. One day you will look back and see how far you've come." The boy took the notebook eagerly. He began writing every day, small steps, reflections, lessons learned, and hopes for the future. Each page filled him with motivation. He felt like he was planting seeds for a future he could finally believe in. School became easier too. The boy started focusing more, asking questions and learning new things with curiosity. Teachers began noticing a difference. He was more confident, engaged, and determined. He no longer saw education as just a requirement. He saw it as a tool to build the life he dreamed of. At the diner, he also began showing initiative. He suggested small improvements, helped train new coworkers, and even learned a few basic management skills from observing the owner. People started noticing his potential. The boy realized that by acting with care, responsibility, and courage, he could inspire trust and respect even in small ways. The man watched quietly, proud of the boy's growth. He often said, "You are learning faster than I imagined. Keep going. Life will test you, but don't be afraid. You have the heart and mind to overcome." One evening, the boy stayed a little later at the diner, counting his small savings. He thought about how far he had come. Just months ago, he had been barely surviving, unsure if he would ever have a chance to improve his life. Now he had hope, guidance, and a plan, but more importantly, he had belief in himself, a spark that could never be taken away. The man joined him that evening, holding a small cup of coffee. "You're ready," he said quietly. "Not because life is easy, but because you have learned to face it with courage, kindness, and wisdom. You will see, your choices now will shape the rest of your life." The boy nodded, feeling a sense of calm and purpose. He realized that the journey was far from over, but he no longer felt lost. He had a guide, he had tools, and he had a heart that could create change. And most importantly, he knew that even in a world that often felt unfair, he could act with kindness and courage, and that could change everything. That night, as he walked home under the glow of the streetlights, he felt a quiet excitement in his chest. He had begun to see the world differently, not as something to fear, but as something to shape. One small act, one decision, one choice at a time, could create a future that was brighter than anything he had imagined. And for the first time, he truly believed it. The boy had been working hard for months now, learning from the man on the corner, saving every little bit of money he could, and thinking about the future in ways he never had before. Life had begun to feel different, not easier, but clearer. He knew where he wanted to go, and he had someone guiding him, someone who believed in him even when he doubted himself. One morning, the man arrived with a strange look on his face. It was the kind of expression that made the boy stop what he was doing and pay attention. "I have something to tell you," the man said. "Something important. I think you are ready." The boy's heart skipped a beat. "Ready for what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man smiled faintly. "Ready for an opportunity. A chance to step out of survival mode and start building something real. It won't be easy, but it could change your life. And it starts with a choice." The boy felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had been learning, saving, planning, and dreaming, but he had never imagined an actual chance like this would appear. "What do I have to do?" he asked carefully. "You need to trust me and take the first step," the man replied. "I have some contacts, people who know me from before I lost everything. They are willing to give someone a chance, someone with heart and potential. I want to recommend you." The boy's mind raced. He had heard stories about opportunities like this, but they always seemed distant, meant for someone else. Could someone like him, just a teenager from a struggling neighborhood, really have a shot at something life-changing? He looked at the man and saw the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet confidence that this could work. Slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it. I trust you." Over the next few days, the man helped him prepare. They sat together on the corner, going over what the boy would say, how he would present himself, and how to show confidence even when he felt nervous. The man shared stories about people who had succeeded despite being underestimated, emphasizing that preparation and belief in oneself were more powerful than talent alone. The boy practiced every detail. He rehearsed introducing himself, explaining his goals, and talking about what he had learned. At first it felt awkward, but the man encouraged him patiently. "Confidence comes from knowing your worth and what you can do," he said. "It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is how you step forward." Finally, the day came. The man led the boy to a small office in a building downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it felt important, and the boy's stomach churned with nerves. Inside, a few people were waiting, and they looked at him with curious eyes. The man whispered, "Remember everything we practiced. Speak from your heart. Show them who you are." The boy took a deep breath and stepped forward. His voice was steady, surprisingly so, as he introduced himself, talked about his experiences, and explained how he had been learning and preparing for a chance to do something meaningful. He spoke about his work ethic, his dreams, and his desire to help not just himself, but also his family and his community. To his surprise, the people listening seemed impressed. They nodded, asked questions, and listened carefully. The boy realized that this was not about being perfect, it was about showing determination, honesty, and heart. He had spent so long doubting himself that he forgot he had those qualities already, but seeing their reaction made him believe in himself even more. After the meeting, the man smiled at him. "You did well," he said. "I told you you have what it takes. Now it's their choice, but I think they will see your potential." A few days later, the boy received a call. He had been given a small position in a local project, something that allowed him to earn money while learning skills he could use to grow in the future. It wasn't a big job, but it was more than he had ever imagined. It was an opportunity to step into a world that had once seemed impossible. The boy couldn't contain his excitement. He ran home to tell his mother and sister. Their reactions were priceless: tears, hugs, and a feeling of pride that filled the small apartment with warmth. His mother's eyes sparkled with emotion. "I am so proud of you," she said. "You've worked hard, and this is your chance. Don't let it go." The boy felt a mix of gratitude and responsibility. He knew that this opportunity was not just about him. It was about his family, the man who had guided him, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He promised himself that he would give it everything he had. As he started the new project, the boy noticed how different it was from the diner job. He was learning about organization, planning, and leadership. He was meeting people who were kind, supportive, and encouraging, and he began to see how much potential he had to grow. The man on the corner continued to guide him, visiting sometimes to offer advice, encouragement, and reminders that challenges were part of the journey, not a reason to give up. One afternoon, the man said something that stayed with the boy. "Opportunities will come, but they are not always fair. You have to grab them when they appear and work harder than anyone else to keep them. Talent alone is not enough. Heart, persistence, and courage will take you further than you can imagine." The boy applied those words to everything he did. He worked longer hours, stayed focused, and learned from every mistake. When something went wrong, he didn't give up. He asked questions, sought guidance, and tried again. Slowly, he began to see progress. People noticed his dedication, and small responsibilities were given to him. His confidence grew, and he realized that the world was full of opportunities for those who were willing to act and persevere. Meanwhile, he never forgot where he came from. He continued to visit the man on the corner, bringing food and sharing updates about his new job. The man watched proudly as the boy grew into a young person capable of facing challenges and creating his own path. "You are becoming the person I knew you could be," he said one morning, his eyes shining. "Never forget this feeling and never stop learning. Life will reward you if you keep moving forward." The boy's family noticed the changes too. His mother found that she could breathe a little easier, knowing her son had direction and support. His sister looked up to him, inspired by his determination and courage. The apartment that had once felt heavy with worry now felt lighter, filled with hope and possibilities. Even the community began to notice. People who had known the boy when he was struggling saw his growth, his new confidence, and his willingness to help others, and they began to treat him differently. Respect and admiration replaced pity, and the boy felt a sense of pride that went beyond himself. It was about proving that hard work, courage, and kindness could truly create change. One day, the man sat with him and said, "You are ready for more. The next step will not be easy, but it will shape the rest of your life. Remember everything we have worked on. Stay humble, stay kind, and keep your heart in the right place." The boy nodded, understanding the weight of those words. He knew that bigger challenges were coming, but he also knew he had been prepared. He had learned to act with courage, to plan carefully, and to persevere even when life seemed unfair. Most importantly, he had learned the value of kindness, empathy, and belief in oneself. That evening, as he walked home, he looked around the streets he had once known as just a place to survive. Now they felt like a path to opportunity, a world full of lessons and possibilities. He remembered the first time he had shared food with the man, and he realized that simple act had started a chain reaction, changing his life in ways he could never have imagined. The boy understood now that life was not about waiting for luck or wishing for miracles. It was about taking action, seizing opportunities, learning from mistakes, and never forgetting the values that made him who he was. And as he walked home that night, he felt a quiet sense of excitement and determination. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time it felt possible. The boy's life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. What had started as a small act of kindness, sharing a meal with a man on the corner, had grown into a chain of events that was shaping his future. The lessons he had learned, the guidance he had received, and the confidence he had built were now leading him to opportunities he once thought were impossible. Every day, he continued to work hard at his new position. He arrived early, stayed late, and gave his best effort to every task. At first, some people doubted him, assuming that a young teenager from a struggling neighborhood could not handle responsibilities. But the boy had learned resilience. He had learned that the only opinion that truly mattered was his own. With patience and dedication, he showed that he could learn quickly, solve problems, and contribute in ways that surprised even himself. The man on the corner remained a constant presence in his life. Sometimes they would sit together quietly. Other times they would have long conversations about the boy's progress and future plans. The man shared stories of his own life, his mistakes, his successes, and the lessons he had learned from losing everything and starting over. Each story was a reminder that life was unpredictable, but with courage, determination, and kindness, a person could overcome even the hardest challenges. One day, the man leaned closer and said, "You have done more than I ever expected. You have grown not just in skill, but in character. People notice that. They see your heart, your courage, and your willingness to act. That is rare. Never forget it." The boy felt a swell of pride, but he also felt humility. He knew that none of this would have been possible without the man's guidance, without the chance he had been given, and without the lessons of empathy and kindness that had started it all. He realized that success was not just about personal gain. It was about carrying forward what you had learned, helping others, and using opportunities wisely. With the new project going well, the boy began thinking about bigger goals. He wanted to do more than just improve his own life. He wanted to help his family, his community, and people who had struggled like he once had. The man encouraged him to dream bigger, to plan for long-term goals, and to take steps that could create lasting change. "You have heart and determination," the man said one afternoon. "Now you need vision. What do you want to build? How do you want to impact the world around you?" The boy thought carefully. He wanted to build a future where his family was secure, where he could help others, and where he could be proud of himself. He also wanted to give back to the people who had helped him, especially the man who had believed in him when no one else did. He began to write down plans, small steps that could eventually lead to big changes. He created a vision for a life filled with purpose, not just survival. As the boy worked toward these goals, life continued to test him. There were mistakes, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But each time he remembered the man's lessons: to act with courage, to learn from failure, and to never give up. Slowly but surely, he began to overcome challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. His confidence grew and his skills improved. People began to see him as someone dependable, someone capable, and someone with a future worth investing in. One evening, the man arrived with a smile that seemed brighter than usual. "I have something for you," he said. "An opportunity to take the next step. This could change everything, but you have to be ready to step up and work harder than ever." The boy listened carefully as the man explained a chance to work with a local business owner who was looking for someone with heart, honesty, and determination. The position was not just a job. It was a mentorship, a chance to learn skills, make connections, and eventually start building something of his own. The boy's heart raced. He had worked for this moment, even if he had not realized it, and now it was within reach. "I'm ready," he said, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. "I will do my best." The man nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "I know you will. Remember everything we've discussed. Stay humble, stay kind, and keep your heart in the right place. That is what will guide you through challenges and lead you to success." The boy took the opportunity and threw himself into the work. He learned quickly, asked questions, and observed carefully. He discovered the importance of communication, planning, and teamwork. He saw how decisions affected others and realized that leadership was not about authority. It was about responsibility, empathy, and trust. Every day brought a new lesson, and he embraced them all. At home, the boy's family felt the changes too. His mother's exhaustion seemed lighter, knowing her son had direction and purpose. His sister looked up to him with admiration, inspired by his courage and determination. The small apartment that had once felt heavy with worry now felt warm, filled with hope and possibility. The boy understood that his actions were creating ripples, not just in his own life, but in the lives of those he loved. Word of his dedication and growth began to spread. People in the community noticed his hard work,